Joshua was a young man from the southern part of Nigeria. He had always been a bright and hardworking person, known for his intelligence and kindness. From a young age, he had been determined to make something great out of his life. He studied hard in school, always aiming to be the best in his class. His teachers loved him, his classmates respected him, and his parents were proud of him. After years of dedication, Joshua finally completed his university education. He had dreamed of getting a good job immediately after school, but life did not go as he had planned. He sent applications to different companies, attended interviews, and waited for replies, but no company was hiring him. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Each morning, he woke up hopeful, checking his emails and answering calls, but the job he longed for never came. With time, Joshua realized that sitting around feeling frustrated would not change anything. He decided to stay at home while he continued his job search, but instead of feeling sorry for himself, he used his time to help those around him. Joshua lived in a busy compound filled with different families. The compound had children running around, women chatting in small groups, and men who left early in the morning for work. Even though Joshua had no job, he never let his situation bring sadness to his heart. Instead, he focused on making life easier for his neighbors. Whenever it looked like it was about to rain, and most people had gone to work, Joshua would walk around the compound, checking to see if anyone had left their clothes on the drying line. If he found any, he would quickly gather them and fold them neatly, making sure nothing got wet. If he saw an elderly woman struggling to carry heavy bags from the market, he would rush to help her. If a child fell while playing, he was always the first to help them up and wipe away their tears. But what made Joshua truly special was his love for children. Every child in the compound adored him because he treated them like younger siblings. He would carry the little ones on his shoulders, spin them around, and play fun games with them. Sometimes, he would organize a small gathering in the evening, where he would sit with the children and tell them stories. His stories were magical. He told tales of brave warriors, talking animals, hidden treasures, and mysterious lands. The children would sit quietly, their eyes wide with excitement, listening to every word. Some of them would even try to guess what would happen next, but Joshua always had a way of surprising them with unexpected twists in the story. Even the parents in the compound loved him. They knew their children were safe with him, and they admired how he treated everyone with kindness. Some of the mothers would joke, saying, "Joshua, when you get married and have your own children, you will be the best father ever." He would laugh in response, shaking his head. Whenever there was electricity, all the children would rush to Joshua's room. His small space became a place of joy and laughter. They would sit on his bed, on the floor, or anywhere they could find space, watching movies together. Sometimes, their mothers would join them, laughing along with the children. Joshua's room was not the biggest or the fanciest, but it felt like the warmest place in the world. He had a way of making everyone feel comfortable, loved, and happy. But unknown to him, his peaceful days were about to change. Something unexpected was coming. Something that would turn his world upside down. Joshua had become more than just a neighbor to the people in the compound, he was family. The parents trusted him so much that, on days when they were not yet back from work, they would tell their children to stay in Joshua's room until they returned. They knew their children were safe with him. At first, Joshua didn't think much of it. He was happy to keep them company, watch movies with them, and play games. But as time went on, he started seeing an opportunity to do something meaningful. Since the children spent so much time with him, he decided to teach them valuable lessons. He started helping them with their schoolwork. If they had an assignment, he would patiently guide them through it. He didn't just give them the answers, he made sure they understood what they were doing. Sometimes, he would teach them little things about life, how to be kind to people, how to help their parents at home, and how to work hard in school. He told them that one day, they would grow up to be great men and women. The children listened to him with bright eyes, taking his words seriously. Among the families in the compound, there was one that stood out, the Obi family. Mr. and Mrs. Obi were kind and generous people who treated Joshua like their own son. They appreciated everything he did in the compound and never failed to show their gratitude. Whenever they returned from work, they would bring small gifts for him, a pack of biscuits, a bottle of soft drink, or even some money. "Joshua, thank you for always helping," Mrs. Obi would say with a warm smile. "We are lucky to have you in this compound." Joshua always felt touched by their kindness, but he never expected anything in return. Helping people made him happy, and that was enough for him. One quiet evening, as Joshua sat in his room reading a book, he heard the soft patter of small feet entering his room. He looked up and saw a little girl smiling at him. It was one of the children from the compound. "Uncle Joshua, play with me," she said excitedly, running towards him. Joshua smiled and lifted her onto his lap. "What game do you want to play today?" he asked. The little girl giggled and pointed at his legs. "Carry me on your leg like a horse," she said, laughing. Joshua laughed too. He always played this game with the children. He gently placed her on his legs and began bouncing her up and down, pretending she was riding a horse. "Giddy up. Giddy up," he said playfully, making horse sounds. The little girl laughed loudly, enjoying the fun. Joshua's body moved naturally with the game, his legs bouncing her up and down. Moments like this made him forget his worries, forget that he was still jobless, forget that life had not gone the way he had planned. Meanwhile, in the Obi household, Mrs. Obi was preparing dinner when her daughter, Mercy, walked into the kitchen holding her school bag. Mercy was a smart and quiet girl, about 9 years old. She always listened to her parents and did her schoolwork on time. "Mommy, my teacher gave us an assignment," she said, looking a little worried. Mrs. Obi, who was busy stirring a pot of soup, sighed. "Go and meet Uncle Joshua. Let him assist you," she said without turning around. Mercy hesitated. "Mommy, it's already late," she said softly. But her mother was too busy to listen. "Just go and do your assignment," she said. "I'm preparing your food now." Mercy looked at her mother for a moment, then nodded. She picked up her school bag and slowly walked out of the kitchen. She knew exactly where to go. Uncle Joshua's room. The place where all the children loved to be. What Mercy didn't know was that this night would change everything. Mercy go to Joshua's house. As she opens the door, Joshua just finished bathing a neat white towel. Mercy said, "Uncle Joshua, my mommy said you should help me with my assignment." He said, "Come and sit down on my lap and let me teach you as I'm doing it." Mercy sat down on Joshua's leg. Joshua could not control his body again. Mercy asks, "Uncle, what is this?" "Something is touching me at the back," Joshua asked her. "Do you enjoy it?" Mercy said, "I think so. But please, can you explain to me?" He said, "Come back tomorrow after school and I will explain to you." She was happy and said, "I will come." After the assignment she left. The next day, as soon as Mercy got home from school, she rushed to Uncle Joshua's house. She always looked forward to his kind smile and warm words. Uncle Joshua was her favorite person. He made her laugh, gave her treats, and was always there to listen. She felt safe around him. "Are you back from school, Mercy?" Uncle Joshua asked when he saw her walking up to the door. Mercy nodded, her school bag bouncing with each step. "Yes, Uncle. School was fine today. We learned about animals and how they live." Joshua smiled and gently ruffled her hair. "That's good to hear, my little star. Come inside, let's talk." Mercy entered the house, excited to share her day. But something felt a little different today. As she sat on the couch in the living room, she couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was wrong. She couldn't explain it, but there was a weird tension in the air. And Joshua slept with her and he disvirgined her, and Mercy was crying bitterly, seeing blood coming out of her 2 legs. The afternoon passed slowly, and when it was time for Mercy to go home, she stood up to leave. But just as she was walking to the door, she felt dizzy. Everything spun around her, and she collapsed on the floor. Uncle Joshua rushed over to her, his face filled with concern. Mercy tried to speak, but all that came out were weak sobs. She felt scared, confused, and didn't understand what was happening. But something worse was happening to her, something that she couldn't explain. Suddenly, a neighbor walked past and saw Mercy lying there, her legs covered in a strange red substance. The neighbor gasped, horrified. "Mercy! What happened to you?" she cried out, running toward her. Mercy, barely able to speak, pointed weakly towards Uncle Joshua's room. The neighbor's eyes widened in shock and fear. Without wasting a second, she ran to Mercy's mother, Mrs. Obi, who was in her house nearby. "Mercy! What has happened to my daughter?" Mrs. Obi cried out, running to the door when she heard the screams. She rushed over to Mercy, who was now crying uncontrollably. The sight of her daughter in pain broke Mrs. Obi's heart. "Mama, Uncle Joshua, he..." Mercy couldn't finish her words. Her voice trembled with fear. Mrs. Obi fell to her knees, her face pale with disbelief. "Joshua has done this to you," she whispered, her voice shaking. In a state of shock and panic, Mrs. Obi immediately grabbed her phone and dialed her husband, Mr. Obi. "Joshua has hurt Mercy. He's destroyed her life," she screamed into the phone. Mr. Obi rushed to the house in a panic, but when he arrived, the truth became clear. Mercy had been hurt by someone she trusted, someone her family had loved and cared for. Mrs. Obi ran outside, yelling for help. "Joshua has hurt my daughter. Someone call the police," she screamed. Neighbors gathered around, and Mr. Obi quickly called the police. Within minutes, officers arrived at the house and rushed inside to arrest Joshua. They didn't know what they would find, but what they uncovered shocked everyone. At the police station, it was revealed that Joshua had been hurting more than just Mercy. There were 3 other girls in the compound who had also been harmed. Their parents had no idea what was going on. The police officers were stunned. How could someone they all trusted have been hurting children right under their noses? As the news spread through the neighborhood, people couldn't believe what had happened. Joshua, the friendly, kind man they had known for so long, was revealed to be someone completely different. Mercy's world, her trust in the people she loved, had been shattered. Mercy's heart was broken, and she didn't know how to feel. She felt lost, confused, and betrayed by someone she had thought was family. But she knew one thing: she was brave. She was strong, and she would heal. Her mother held her close, promising her that they would make sure Joshua would never hurt anyone again. And together, they would begin the long journey of healing, finding hope and strength in each other. The days that followed were filled with whispers and disbelief. People in the compound couldn't stop talking about what had happened. They had trusted Joshua. He had been part of their lives for years, helping with errands, offering a shoulder to lean on, and being someone they could count on. But now, they were left in shock, unable to come to terms with the truth. "How could we have been so blind?" one of the neighbors asked, shaking their head. "We all thought he was a good man. I can't believe he betrayed us like this." Another neighbor, wiping tears from her eyes, added, "He was like family. How could he do this to our children? To our community? Now, I can't trust anyone, not even the people I call friends." The sadness and regret filled the air. The compound that once felt like a safe place now seemed like a reminder of betrayal. Parents started to look at each other with distrust, unsure of who to believe anymore. They hugged their children tightly, promising to protect them, but deep down, they knew they would never feel the same again. A week later, the trial for Joshua took place. The courtroom was filled with tense silence as the judge read the verdict. The families who had been hurt by Joshua's actions sat in the front rows, their faces a mixture of anger and sorrow. Mercy sat with her mother, holding her hand tightly, trying to stay strong, though her heart ached. "Joshua, you are hereby sentenced to life in prison," the judge announced in a firm voice. The words felt heavy, and a collective sigh seemed to echo through the courtroom. It was over. The man who had caused so much pain was finally being held accountable, but the damage was done. Mercy and the other children would never be the same. Outside the courthouse, the neighbors and families began to speak more openly. They realized that their trust had been broken, and now, it was time to protect their children in ways they hadn't before. "We have to pay closer attention," one parent said. "We can't just assume our children are safe because it's family or friends." Mercy's mother, Mrs. Obi, who had been quiet for a while, spoke up to the crowd. "Parents, please listen to me," she said, her voice full of emotion. "We have to monitor our children, especially our daughters. Don't just say, 'Oh, it's your uncle, your brother, your neighbor.' We need to pay attention. We need to make sure they feel safe enough to tell us everything. Ask them questions. Play with them. Let them be free with you. Only then will they be able to talk to you about anything that might be happening." She paused, her eyes looking out at the other parents, her voice shaking with the weight of what had happened. "Please, educate your children about what is right and wrong. Teach them about boundaries, about respect, and what they need to know at the right time. We cannot let this happen again. Our children deserve to feel safe and loved." Her words hung in the air, and a deep silence followed. It was a hard truth to swallow, but everyone knew it was necessary. The pain of what had happened to Mercy and the others was still raw, but it was a wake-up call for everyone in the community. "Thank you for listening," Mrs. Obi finished, her voice steady now. "We cannot change the past, but we can protect our children in the future. Let's all do our part to make sure something like this never happens again." With the heavy heart and the lesson learned, the community started to come together, vowing to be more vigilant, to listen more carefully, and to make sure their children knew they were loved and safe. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to share it, like it, and subscribe to my channel for more important stories like this. It's time to keep our children safe, to protect them, and to make sure they always feel heard. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.